Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of All of Us Are Lost, a rewatch podcast looking back 20 years on at the TV phenomena of Lost. I am one of your co hosts, Kat Hughes, and with me, as always,
Andy.
is Andy. And today we are here to talk about episodes 5 and 6, which is White Rabbit, directed by Kevin Hooks, and House of the Rising Sun, directed by Michael Zimberg. And I guess we will start with the first one, which is White Rabbit, which is kind of our first look at Jack. Jack's been this big presence for the first few episodes. He's the hero, he's the one that's helping everybody, and now we get to delve a little bit into his backstory. So, Andy, how did you find this one on a rewatch?
Yeah, really interesting. I think it was good finding out sounds a basic statement, but it was a good kind of window into Jack and his leadership qualities or lack thereof, potentially. We find his relationship with his dad and how strained that is, and what it you can see the kind of internal battles that he's going through from the flashbacks and from still as he's still going through it while he's on the island. I thought it was an excellent episode. Quite surprising, I think, especially with how kind of central to everything Jack has been from the off. That I know it's only 5 episodes in, but it still feels that maybe he would be the first one you would find out about. But it's interesting that they have held off on him till a couple of episodes in, so you've got to know a bit more about him.
Yeah, what I enjoy as well is that with Kate and Locke, it's kind of you're finding out almost like immediately before they got on the plane, almost you're finding very recent history. But with Jack, it goes straight back to his childhood. It opens with him as a kid. I mean, it's only a fleeting scene, but then we see another scene which feels like it was a while ago in the past. So I thought that was quite interesting that although we have had to wait a little bit of time, we have gone much further and deeper into his history in this first episode.
Mhm. Yeah, and it shows his that kind of early relationship with his dad, where his dad's explaining to him, I tried to save a kid, that kid died, but I came home, had a drink, got over it, and then I'm fine. You're not strong enough to do that. And that's so his dad's almost saying to him, there's no point in you fighting, there's no point in you putting yourself forward, being that leader, because you don't have the ability, basically. You don't have it in you to lead people, to bounce back from any adversity. Um, and it's shown through Jack, especially at this point, and we've had him in I think the episode previously to this, where he's pushing back against people trying to make him the go-to. He's very he seemed very reticent to take anything on. He wasn't wanting to take any part in the kind of religious ceremony at the end for the burning of the bodies in the hangar. And even in this episode, he is again with the law. There's a subplot that runs where the waters went missing. Charlie, Charlie and Hully are trying to force him to help them, and he's very standoffish. He's not wanting to get involved. You can see that kind of internal turmoil starting to come out in him, making him more than just your kind of knight in shining armor.
Yeah, because around about the time that we had Lost, we with Jack, we also had Jack Bauer in 24, and that's a very different Jack. That is the Jack that's the hero
Mhm.
that's going to come in and do this, that, and the other. So yeah, it is interesting to see this Jack who is kind of being forced into that role of leader. I mean, I think there's a conversation later on with Locke, where Locke's saying like, I can't lead them, they won't follow me. It has to be you, which is obviously in contrast with what his dad's saying, but it is quite interesting that we have got a reluctant hero in this sense, where I think historically in TV and film it's always been, this is your hero and he's going to save the day. I mean, the episode opens with Jack not saving somebody. I mean, that's not
Mm.
particularly heroic.
Yeah, yeah. he makes a choice as well, doesn't he? Because Boone has went to. It just seems as if he's overall his
Yeah.
lifeguard credentials are terrible. Like you open with someone drowning who's went for a swim, and Jack ends up grabbing hold of who he thinks it is, and it turns out this is Boone, who has also attempted to swim out to save the person in distress and has got into distress himself. So not only is he really bad at swimming, he can't do CPR. If he was a lifeguard, the body count, if it was a pool or if it was on a beach somewhere, there just must be just bodies piled high from Boone, just making a total mess of everything. I can't imagine maybe he can't swim, he can't do CPR, can't run on a beach. He just falls over. It's some like sort of slapstick comedy thing. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of take, and there's a bit of animosity there between Boone and Jack as well, because Boone's angry at Jack for saving him, and Jack's then angry at Boone for being angry at him. It's like, well, you want me to be the saviour, you want me to be the leader, but now you're criticising me for it, so he can't win, really.
I do feel a little bit sorry for Boone because he has just been terrible. And then again, in this episode, he continues to be terrible. He tries to take on that role of leader by sort of hiding away the water. And
Mm,
that was that's the wrong thing to do. That's not how you go about this. And he is the one that has a hero complex. He wants to be the hero. He wants to be needed. And I kind of feel like if he's a lifeguard, it's maybe like I don't know, the family country club, and nobody really goes in the water. They're just kind of like sipping by the pool, like drinking martinis. So he's never had to do anything other than sit there and look pretty, because that kind of feels like it's like when he says like I've got a job, and then I think we find out in another few episodes that that job is kind of working for his family's like wedding planning business, or like as a florist or something. So it's not quite the same scale as being a surgeon. But to Boone, he's using that as a no, I am, I'm equally valid in this.
yeah. He's the lifeguard because he's maybe doesn't drink, and the rest of them just sitting about getting pissed. So he's the only responsible one. So yeah, just put it onto Boone. And the pool's maybe like a meter deep at most. So yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting the way the two of them kind of bounce off each other, and the subplot of the water going missing is Boone thinking he's doing right, trying to take responsibility, but just being a bit naive and um, not up to it. Again, like it's something that he's not really up to. He's tried to make a maybe not a power play as such, because I don't think he's that way inclined. Certainly doesn't seem that way inclined at this stage. But he's made a mistake based on an inflated ego, and if he is, yeah, later on
Mm.
finding out he does work with his family, can imagine that the ego in him probably is a lot higher due to that status in what is obviously clearly like a wealthy family, as you can see from Shannon. Um,
Mm.
it was interesting as well the chat between Jack and Locke that the previous episode was that we've discussed as in our previous recording was the kind of mystery of John Locke starting to open up and unravel. Um, and these two important figures on the island already, the spiritual and the medical and the kind of science, um, forming quite a good relationship at this moment in time. They have well, maybe they could have disagreements. Locke certainly seems to understand that uh, working with Jack would be for the benefit not only of everyone, but and having Jack in a healthy mental and physical state is going to be something that would be a kind of benefit to everyone that's there. And that's why he takes the responsibility of trying to find an external water source and tries to allow Jack to go through his journey to start him off.
Yeah, and there's definitely more mysteries of John Locke sort of posed in this
Mm,
episode, because there is, Jack goes sort of running off into the jungle after the apparition of his father. Meanwhile, the rest of them are left to deal with we need water. And Locke's just like, oh no, I can go, because Kate's like, oh, I'll go, and then Locke's like, no, you need to stay here, and besides, I know where to look. And it's like, you can interpret that as, he did all of his like hunting, walkabout, sort of survivalist research, but also we know that he's encountered the thing that is in the jungle. Has that told him where the water is? Has he been sort of playing that game until it's the right moment to be needed, so that he can then position himself as savior? But then through the actions with Jack, he then sort of takes the step to one side to let Jack be the hero that brings them water. And
Mm.
there's I think is it this one where he's sort of like, yeah, he's having a conversation with Jack, and he's like, I looked into the eyes of this island, and what I saw was beautiful. So he's admitting to Jack that he has seen something, and it's just that ever growing question of how much does Locke know about this island? When's he going to reveal his secrets?
Mm. Yeah, I kind of took it as him when he says to Kate that he'll go. Certainly don't know if there's anything malicious with him. He's very secretive at the minute. I just wonder if he just wants to be not the hero, but be the one that finds the mysteries, finds. Obviously, we know from his experience that he now is miraculously able to walk. Does he not want the island secrets to himself, but he wants to be the one to uncover them for a kind of longer term goal? Again, not necessarily maliciously, but there's just something. There is just something off about him overall. While he is being friendly and approachable to most people, yeah, he's happy to go walkabout, as we found last episode as well.
We're only 6 days in to the island. There's, Jack's talking to Kate early on, and there's like, we're 6 days in. We find out that there was 47 survivors, which has now been taken down to 46. Like, a lot has happened in 6 days.
Mm, yeah, it's been certainly a a rough time for them starting off. It's I can only imagine it's not going to get better. Um, one of the interesting things I think with the overall story in this, but I think with some of the flashbacks, and this is maybe more talking about our next episode, the House of Rising Sun, but the full focus of this, majority of it is Jack, even in flashback. So some of the episodes have been primarily about, in terms of flashbacks, like the Locke episode, have been mostly about Locke, but there's interspersed extra character moments for for the kind of supporting cast members as well. But this one feels a lot more exclusive to Jack. There is other. That's not saying it's just about him, but the kind of balance of the episode is very, very heavily into Jack finding like, his father, the relationship with his father, his visions, his journey through the island. Him eventually, as you said, being the one that finds the water source and finds them somewhere new to live as well. It's interesting that it's so heavily focused on him.
Yeah. I mean, there are some moments with some of the characters we get. I think it's our first scene, or one of the very first scenes between Claire and Kate. I think up until this
Mm,
point, we've only seen Kate with the men. This is our first scene with another woman. I know that like we had a brief exchange between Shannon and Claire a couple of episodes back, but I think this is literally the next scene, which has two women. So I mean, doesn't really say great things about Lost on a rewatch. That the women are only given like
yeah.
a couple of scenes together. I mean, that's not passing any Bechdel test anytime soon. Um,
Mm,
but it's as short as the scene is, it's nice to see Kate with a woman, because she's either with, Jack or Saeed or Charlie or Sawyer. So it's nice to see her kind of get a bit of girl time. Even if that girl is
yeah.
talking to her about astrology, and Kate clearly has no interest in astrology whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, It is, I think, as you said, even Claire's interactions have been pretty much through Charlie. A bit at the start through Hurley. Um, Shannon, through her relationship with Boone, has pretty much been her only kind of male interaction, and again, manipulating through Charlie, so it doesn't paint her in a good light. Getting that into the from a character of Claire as well, who we've seen a small amount of, but she seems likable. You want to root for her. You want her to get. You want it not to say she needs help, but she's a heavily pregnant woman on a deserted island that's just been in a plane crash. So there is an element that's going to require a bit extra for her. Seeing her having that kind of back and forth with Kate, it again opens her up and shows there's not just the spirituality that Locke's got in terms of the Mysteries Island. These other characters have it as well. She's got her astrology that she kind of leans on and believes in, and that could again lead to something more in the future.
And meanwhile, poor old son is still trapped with Jin, who, she's like,
Mm,
when's somebody going to tell us what to do? And he just literally turns around and said, I will tell you what to do. So Jin is still not a very nice guy
no.
whatsoever. Um, so yeah, there's not much of poor old son. I think something that I was reading, which I thought was quite interesting in this, because Saeed and Kate have a lot of conversations, is that originally the plan was for Saeed and Kate to become romantically involved, which I thought
Okay.
I read recently, which I thought was quite interesting, because then on a rewatch with that information, there are, you know, whereas like her conversations with Jack, they're kind of, I think they're skating around each other. He knows that
Mm,
she was the one with the marshal, but he doesn't know why she won't tell him. And they've got this flirtation, and then obviously with Sawyer, it's very much, that kind of playground, boys and girls, I'm going to be
appreciate
mean to you because I like you. But with Saeed, like Saeed and Kate have like honest conversations. They both want off this island. They're both working kind of behind other people's backs a lot of the time to get off this island. And I think it was quite interesting to read that, they, in one version of this, were a couple.
Mm. I think as well, you can see that them sort of laying the groundwork for that, especially when they're dealing with the French signal and they're talking about the triangulation of the complicated things about that. And yeah, there does seem to be a spark's maybe the wrong word between them in terms of the way it's been written.
Mm.
But I think it's Naveen Andrews as well, just as that he's got a really attractive manner, not just being attractive in terms of physically. It works really well with him. They seem to bounce off each other really well, and I could see that, and I can imagine as well with Jack having been quite kind of late added, wasn't he? Not late added, but I think he was meant to be in early doors, like we discussed it before. He was supposed to die quite early on, so they've juggled it from there on.
Yeah, it's just interesting to kind of think, oh, I wonder what that makes. They do sign it. I think it's kind of mutual respect, isn't it? Like they both
Mm,
respect each other as, being capable. Like, Jack is always worried when Kate's going to go off for another wander in the jungle, whereas Saeed is just like, yeah, I fully respect and, believe that you are capable of doing this. So it's quite nice
mm,
dynamic. And I think when I remember it, I always remember it as Jack and Kate versus Jack and Sawyer, but there is also this Jack and Saeed that's kind of sort of just bubbling away under the surface, which is quite interesting.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and the this kind of Side and Sawyer rivalry that's happened as well, which is mostly based around racism. I think with Jack and Side, I think it is because they're two very powerful characters in terms of their beliefs and what they're wanting to do. And that's going to, because they're so kind of strong willed and maybe a bit pig headed as well, they're going to have some sort of clash. Then they've got Side and Sawyer, yeah, just Sawyer just being a dick. It's just being early on anyway. It seems to have just become across as if he can start a fight, he will. Um, and especially when he's got someone who, yeah, racially, who is able to racially profile, which is used again in this episode. I think he calls Jin Mr. Miyagi. The cool thing with one of the water bottles he traded for a fish. Um, and yeah, an interesting kind of thruple there with the three of those going at loggerheads.
Yeah, and yeah, Sawyer has now set up his like swap shop. So yeah, he trades the water for fish. You know, Shannon, wants something. She wants some bug repellent, and he's asking for money, which is at least Sawyer's believing that they're going to get off of this island at some point. But I just like that they address the sand fleas. I've seen some of these reality shows like Survivor and whatnot, where like Bear Grylls the island, where like they dump a load of people on an island and they sleep on the beach and they wake up and they've been eaten alive by sandflies. So it was quite nice to see that they have addressed this in Lost, because all of these people, they're 6 days onto this island, but they all still look reasonably beautiful. So at least
Mhm.
they're trying to address the fact that there are these pests. They're just probably only like really attacking the people that we see, the extras on the beach.
Yeah, yeah, they've stayed away from the pretty ones. Like that's what's happened. Yeah, I mean, I've been camping at festivals and just in the woods for like 2 nights, and after 2 nights, I'm so dishevelled. Even if I've got showers nearby, like how they've managed to look like this, it's not bad going. Miracles are the island. Let's just put it to that.
Yeah. I mean, especially as they can't even find a hairbrush. The whole reason why, Kate and Claire are talking is because Claire's looking for a hairbrush. Like, the fact that
Mm.
they've made it 6 days without, being able to brush the hair, where there's, the sea wind, it's rained, there's sand. So yeah, these people are doing, pretty well in terms of their day-to-day condition. Something else that I enjoyed during that opening sort of drowning sequence is we get a slight foreshadowing, because see Jack's not in the water, Jack's not paying any attention. It's Charlie that comes
Mm.
running up to him saying that there's somebody in the water, and he repeatedly says that he can't swim. And
Mm.
knowing what eventually happens with the Charlie character, it's kind of like, oh
Yeah,
my god, he can't swim, and then we know what he eventually goes on to do. So that's quite sad. And then also when Jack's in the water with Boone and he suddenly realizes that Boone is not the victim that he's come out to, he says we got to go back, which we all know is going to become one of Jack's most iconic lines.
yeah, yeah. It's there's so much in this episode that we've not even really hugely touched on the flashbacks yet either. Um, it's we've found out that there's hinted that Jack's got a bit of an alcohol problem on the flight. He's not shown anything on the island of yet that we've seen. But that's obviously linked to problems that his dad has had. Christian, who for some reason has run away to Australia, and for some reason has left his wallet, hasn't slept in his room for 3 days, and gets found dead from massive amounts of alcohol ingestion. I think it leading to cardiac arrest, I think they said it was,
Mm.
which gives you the reason why Jack's there. And it's which ties into the visions. Locke says to Jack something along the lines of, maybe your father's alive on this island. I mean, we've seen him, but and we also near the end find a coffin that has been emptied. But this is also an island that has boar, polar bears, some big monster, and potentially could have anything: lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! Like, there's literally anything could have just taken a body off and eaten it. But we've seen him, so is he there?
Well, yeah, and we know that Locke was paralyzed and now Locke can walk. If this island has some sort of power to make a crippled person walk again, why not resurrect somebody? Why
Yeah.
not? It's-
And I mean, I've got a theory, not a theory, sorry. potential misremembering of something which I won't discuss in this episode because it gives away. You're talking 4 series, 5 series, maybe down the road. I'll just talk to you about it after recording, but there's just something that regarding Jack's dad on Jack's dad's body, and I don't know if I'm misremembering it, but that's for tune in 70 episodes time and find out if I re-reference myself from the third episode.
Yes. I mean, I will. That whole, Jack's whole flashback is, it's big daddy issues. It's, you
Mm,
know, he's following in his father's footsteps. I don't necessarily think he wants to follow in his father's footsteps, but it's obviously something that's been like bred into him. But although his dad wants him to go into medicine like him, he doesn't want him to be better than him. It's he's got that ego. So I
mm,
think the whole like dynamics there are quite interesting. And when the other scene that stands out to me is when he finds the water source and he finds the caves and there's this plane and there's a coffin. There's also a shed load of porcelain dolls, and I'm sorry, I've seen too many horror films to be like, yeah, I'm gonna hang out here. Like, no, not on this island.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's
The only
just
time I've seen that many porcelain dolls, I think, was in an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know if you've watched that, where there is a room full of porcelain dolls, which get used repeatedly by Eva Longoria to frighten Andy Samberg. Um, yeah, it's they are creepy in their own right, and again, you feel the writers of the show don't do anything by accident at this stage. Anyway, um,
yeah.
you feel that there will be a reason for the porcelain dolls. There's a reason, obviously, an empty coffin. There's a reason for that. There's breadcrumbs that you feel are leading to something that we possibly don't know yet with that.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid that did not like porcelain dolls, that's still just a big old nope. And I'm hoping I haven't repressed a scene where like porcelain dolls rise up and start fighting because that won't be fun. Um,
Mm,
but then obviously after he's found the cave, he goes back to the people on the beach and he gives this big speech, which is I guess kind of him asserting the role of leader. He's fought against it for 6 days, but he gives this big rallying thing about, if we don't start working together, we're probably not going to get rescued. It's been 6 days. We need to start living rather than waiting. And, if we don't live together, we're going to die alone.
mm. Yeah, and it's like he's fighting back against his dad's expectations. Like his dad wouldn't have wanted him to be the leader. He would have wanted him to be um, helpful on the island and be productive on the island, but not to be the one that takes on the mantle of the sort of camp leader, as we've seen in the flashbacks. And as you said, his dad wants him to be a surgeon, so he's lifting him up with one hand and pushing him down with the other. He's making sure he's always got his finger on him, just making sure that he can keep him down, keep him. And I don't even know if his dad doesn't want him to be better than him because he thinks he could be. I also think there's an element where his dad just doesn't think he's that good. Like he doesn't see him much value in him as a person, as a son. It just seems completely dismissive. Now, obviously, we haven't found out the reasons for his running away to Australia yet. I don't think, unless I missed something, but there's not full reasons given. But it's but there just seems to be just a disdain for him. Even it's almost like, well, you're my son. I kind of have to legally look after you when you're at a young age anyway. And the minute he's old enough, I'm just going to go and I'm going to run off repeatedly. It's not the first time that he's disappeared. His from the way it sounds, the way Jack's mum uh, tells him about it. Um, yeah, just a horrible individual, and Jack being able to fight back against that and take on the mantle of the leader that everyone really needs at that point as well. is a kind of positive outlook for him.
Mm. And that conversation with Locke obviously contrasts nicely with the conversations that we see him have with his dad, because like I guess Locke is kind of like the father figure that Jack wishes he had had, which is quite
Yeah,
quite interesting. Um, kind
yeah,
of feel that that's the role that Locke is kind of taking on for a few people on the island. You know, Walt's definitely drawn to him and his abilities, and I think as the series goes on, he starts to become like more of a focus for some others on the island as well.
yeah, yeah. It feels like, again, he doesn't want to be at the forefront of everyone's attention because his main focus does seem to be the island. But it feels like his helping people is helping him find himself as well on the island. Not even taking into account Locke's whole backstory, just he's trying to unravel mysteries that maybe we're not seeing. It's all in the background of what Locke's trying. So when he's helping someone, again, is there an undercurrent of I'm doing this because I have a plan that will lead to something greater in the future, linked to the strangeness that's going on, all the weird goings on in the island, and having that father figure, which we do see a lot of actually again in the next episode, the next two episodes, I think actually. Um, he has a caring side, but just it's Locke, you just don't know.
Exactly, exactly. I think maybe now is a good time to, you know, as we're sort of getting into, you know, Locke and things, maybe it is now time to, you know, a good place to look at the House of the Rising Sun. This
Mm,
one is kind of a look back into the marriage of Sun and Jin. Again, kind of as with the Jack one, it goes, but it basically chronicles their whole relationship, and it's kind of this
mm,
classic tale of he's the lowly waiter and she's like the heiress to some sort of like business fortune, but they've fallen in love, but the father will never approve. And it's a very different Jin to the Jin on the island. He's, you know, he's very romantic. And then as we go through their story, he basically goes to work for her dad, and her dad's, I mean, God knows what this man is up to, but he's clearly getting Jin to do some deplorable things, which then changes him, and then he takes it out on her. And we kind of find out through the course of the episode that she was going to leave him, and
yeah,
it does kind of touch upon why she doesn't. But it was, I don't know, after seeing Jin be so mean, I still don't think there's enough in this for me to be like, oh, but it was lovely once, because they don't really spend too much time with him being lovely.
yeah. It's planted the seeds of it, that potentially there is a reason for his controlling nature and his nastiness and his anger issues, it seems. He is clearly forced into some form of work. This is reading into it more than what is given to us. I think that maybe there's almost been like a deal struck with his dad to allow him to marry Sun, and he's getting made to do some awful things. But it's at the same time he's able to be with the women he loves, and they're very well off. But then, that's maybe reading too much into what's not being said. He still comes across violent, angry. He attacks Michael at one point for at what we see is we don't know why. He's just randomly attacks Michael. Um, Michael takes that on as being racist because he says that Koreans and don't like black people in America. So there's just another layer to Jin that you're sitting at. Was it a racist attack? Was it him just being this overly aggressive character? I thought, from when I saw the initial attack on Michael, I thought that was linked to Michael seeing Sun and she's maybe mentioned it, but then obviously it develops into what it is and throughout the episode. Yeah, it's an interesting setup for Jin and Sun, as she was planning on leaving him. Um, which we find before he makes a proclamation to her, and that's how they end up on flight 815, 815, however you want to say it. And yeah, it's it's not enough. It's certainly not a redemption arc in any way, shape, or form, or a redemption flashback. But it opens up more to his character's uh, issues, and it also shows maybe why she's a bit more standoffish at this point with him, and not engaging, not fighting back as much as potentially she would.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the flashbacks, this is so far this kind of the one that's not really too much featured. It doesn't necessarily further either one of the characters, just that she was maybe trying to get out of this potentially toxic relationship, but then she had a change of
Mm,
heart, which again I think is something that is identifiable to people that have been in those sorts of relationships. You know, these people have a great way of kind of winning people back over at the last minute, which is seen here. But we do get the reveal that Sun knows English. You know, she was going to leave him, she was
mm,
going to go to America, and so she's been learning English. So we get I think, but she doesn't tell everybody. She still wants Jin in the dark, but she confides in Michael. You know, we've seen this sort of connection forming between them for the last few episodes, and
yeah.
so she goes and she reveals that she can speak English, and she tries to smooth over the fight because she's very much the peacekeeper in this
Mhm.
scenario. And it was just, again, I thought that the reveal that Sun knew English came a little bit later, but I guess it makes a lot more sense that it was now, because how long can you go with wondering who these people are and why they're not communicating?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think she reveals to Michael that he's wearing Sun's father's watch, which, okay, is not a good thing, especially if everyone's stressed, everyone's het up, they're all angry, miserable, worried, emotional. But if someone was wearing your watch, I think you would maybe say, even if you can't speak, you can still try and articulate before just beating seven shades of shite out of someone and trying to kill them, because he does try and drown them. Like, there's no kind of two ways about it. But then is Jin so warped by what he's been made to do, that which we don't know a huge amount of, is he so warped that that's just his immediate reaction is violence. He doesn't have a negotiating bone. He doesn't have a reasonable side to him. It's just straight out, no violence. I need to. He's got something of mine. I need it back. This is the only way to get it. Um, Sun is starting to, with the reveal of her speaking English, it's shown that she's going to have it again, even more pivotal role going forward. Especially if Jin's being so reluctant to engage with the group. She needs that. She'll need that. You can't be stuck on an island and just have the two of you. It would drive you both mad, especially if you were intentionally going to leave the man you're stuck there with, and he's also incredibly controlling. Um, I think the episode as a whole, this was something, but which I kind of touched on when we were discussing Jack's episode. This one felt like an episode where, like you said, the flashbacks don't give us too much, so the focus of the whole episode isn't hugely based on Jin and Sun because of that. There is the English element that gets brought up, but there's so much more still going on that's not focused on them as much as the Jack one was.
Yeah, definitely. So you've got obviously Jack found this water source at the end of the last episode. So now Jack's taking a team to go and get some water. There's some banter and some flirting between Jack and Kate about his tattoos, and then Charlie calls them out on it. He's like, when you guys are finished, like flirting with one another. We've got he said this great line with the great white hunter, uh, in reference to Jack, like the great white hunter is getting restless, which I just think is, a great way to describe Locke, and kind of just highlights and articulates everyone's feelings to him. Like they need him, but they're all a bit wary of him. And
Aye.
then obviously they go back to the caves, and then they find these bodies in the caves. They find Adam and Eve. They find these two stones, a black and a white stone, which again, it's foreshadowing. We kind of know where this is going. I think it's like season 6 when we find out about those skeletons and their backstory. Um, and obviously there's this conversation, I think, where Charlie like mentions about, oh, are these like the other people, like the French woman's people, but Locke's there? And then Locke asks and they all just completely shut down. So as much as they rely on
Mm.
him for boar hunting, none of them are prepared to let him into that sort of inner circle where there's all the stuff with the, the transmission and all that stuff, which I find quite interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's still that secretive element because they're trying to keep the peace. They're trying to keep people rational, which is hard enough to do when without telling them there's been a group of people that haven't been saved for 15 years. Um, as you mentioned, with the light and the dark stones, it's foreshadowing, but it's also again referencing back to Locke in the pilot when he's got the checkers pieces and he's explaining to Michael, one light, one dark. It's the layers are building up in terms of good and evil, light and dark. Um, what side are you going to fall on? You don't know at this point. You can assume with Jack he's going to be the good guy. You can assume with Sawyer he's going to be the bad guy. But there's too many threads that are still getting pulled that you don't necessarily you wouldn't put your house on it basically if you had to pick a side at this minute in time. Um, the Locke thing again with Locke as the father figure again with Charlie, um, reveals that he knows that he's a drug addict, and he says maybe the island will give you back your guitar. It's I'll let you maybe go on about that because I've got things I want to say about it, but it is interesting again him putting himself forward as that figure.
Again, I'm not convinced that John Locke is a drive shaft on, first of all, because he's like, oh, I know who you
No.
are, but then an episode or so ago, when he's like whittling the whistle to get the dog, Charlie sits down next to him and says, "Oh, I used to play." And I think it's just a case of all Charlie has done since he's been on the island is tell everybody that he is a rock star and he was in Drive Shaft. And I kind of feel that Locke is using that kind of again to his advantage to help Charlie, and he's kind of flattering his ego. And
Yeah.
yeah, there is this whole thing about how much do you want your guitar. You will see a guitar again, and it's again, is it, I just kind of feel like, has he had a sneaky look and he's seen the guitar and now he's just like playing Charlie, or is it just this kismet thing and just John Locke's faith just has the power to bring it? Because he says, doesn't he, that you have to give something up. If you give something up, the island will give to you. Which
Mhm.
begs the question: what did John Locke give to the island to, get the ability to walk again?
Yeah. It's the whole again, it's the light and dark, it's the balance. The way he's saying that everything's got to be perfectly balanced, so you give to take, or you take to give. And Charlie gives for me, I think Locke's seen the guitar, and because he's the one that brings it, isn't he? After Charlie gives the drugs up, and Locke brings him his guitar. Um, so I think Locke's seen the guitar and is using it for manipulative purposes at this point because he knows, and he could be using it overall to be a good person to try and get Charlie clean. But then it's also oh well, the Great White Hunter helped me with this, so I'm in debt to him in some way, shape, or form. Again, it's just so for everything that's it's balanced and is in black and white. There's so many grey shades of Locke that we still don't fully understand. And I think to me at that point he was being manipulative intentionally. I think maybe.
Kind of getting into like, is he going to start a cult? he had his little
Mm,
powwow with Jack in the last episode. Some could suggest that he's been grooming Walt to a degree to kind of fall under his words, because Walt's always asking, where's Mr. Locke? Where's Mr. Locke? Can I go with Mr. Locke? And now, like, Charlie is kind of the next person that he's approaching, and I think he recognizes Charlie's problems with addiction and
mm,
uses that to his advantage to kind of go, okay, well, I can see all these people taking sides, and they're all kind of falling under Jack's spell, but you know I kind of like the idea of having my little group too.
yeah. And it's interesting as well because this episode is the first time we see the camp splitting because there's the shoreline loyal and there's the new cave crew or cave group that whatever you want to call them that are who see the benefits of taking up shelter in there. There's the fresh water, there's proper shelter. I just wonder as well if this is the studio saying you've had so much time sunning yourselves on an island. That pilot cost us 13 million to make. Getting a studio in LA, we just need to cut some money in. But I mean, in terms of storyline, it does make sense. There's going to be a split. But I just wondered. I think I said that to my wife actually at the time of watching it. That's clearly an exec that's looked at the budget and went, "Oh, that's maybe sacked that guy before, so maybe I should try and cut money down."
Also, just the continuity of, they can like put sun cream and stuff on the actors, but that long out on the beach, it's gonna, people are gonna get sunburn, and there was, they've got to keep hydrated, and this other setting is slightly safer. Um,
Mm,
I mean, were you on that island and in that position? Where are you going? Are you staying on the beach to help for rescue, or are you going to where the water is?
100% with the water. I don't like the sun, so um, like I go on a 2 week sun vacation and I stay in the shade or in the room. I don't do it. I used to when I was younger. I used to, if I had a bit of sun, I would tan, and my mum would be jealous because she just goes lobster red. Sorry if you're listening to this, mum. Um, but I just now I am 100% in the shade. I'd have tried to find shade as soon as I got there as well. I did Monster in the Jungle, fine. At least I don't have to sit in the sun. I just break into sweat as well. It's awful. Nobody needs to see it. You? What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, just the whole thing where they initially do is like, oh yeah, we found water. It's a short hike, which we hear from Hurley is not a short hike. It just doesn't make any practical sense. To every day we're going to send people to get water to sustain 46 people. No, like any sort of survival program, the first thing you do is you find a source of water. The fact that it takes them until like day 6 to go, oh, maybe we should go and look for some water, even if we
Mm,
think rescue might be here. The fact that they don't go to look for fresh water is frustrating. So yeah,
yeah.
I'd be in the cave. Well, I'd be near the caves. I wouldn't be in the caves because I'm a massive arachnophobe, and there's clearly spiders in those caves. So yeah, I'd be near the water, but I would not be in a cave.
But the spiders that you can see in the cave, is that better than the ones you can't see out in the forest? So at least
Well,
if you see them in the cave, you know where they are. But if you're in the forest, they could be anywhere.
yeah, I'd be just stood by the fire. I'd
Yeah,
sleep standing up by the fire. They're not going to come near the fire, so
that's
yeah.
very true.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
and it's
yeah, but yeah,
interesting that the point of where the cave is because we don't really see the full trek. You never see the entrance yet. Anyway, you just see them entering the cave. The angle is always from inside, the people coming in, and you don't really ever see where it is in relation. And again, it just makes everything a wee bit more disorientating with the island. It throws you off. You don't get that. Here's us walking to the cave. Here's the entrance to the cave. Now we're in the cave, and then the angle. It's always from the inside.
yeah, and we know that people have been into the jungle. Locke's been hunting for boars.
Mm,
They've done the French transmission. They went for the cockpit, and they haven't stumbled across these caves before. So they've got to, it took Jack going on a spirit quest almost to find this. So it can't be that close. So yeah, it is, the
mm,
geography of this island is all over the place.
Mm. Yeah, which, as we know, they're already massively off course. If this thing is like, I can't remember the name of the painting, but it's with the steps that go up MC somebody, whatever they're called. If that's like
Sure.
the kind of late, that's the one, not Hammer. The if that's the kind of layout of the island, then they're going to be in even more trouble.
Yeah. I think I noted down sort of because obviously as the episodes go on, we get switches and changes with the beach versus cave. But on this initial run at the beach, we've got Sawyer, Saeed, Kate, Michael, and Walt, and then we've got Jack, Locke, Charlie, Hurley, Jin and Sun at the cave. So it's quite interesting that they have kind of split up the the more main characters that we've seen so far into these two different factions, and also given the previous altercation that you have got Michael and Jin completely separated from one another.
Mm. I found it interesting as well that Said stayed on the beach with Sawyer. Um, because Said seems to be fairly sensible in his thinking, and so him staying on the beach when there doesn't seem to be much chance of rescue, you don't need a huge amount of people there. If there is somehow a boat or a plane passing over, they've not seen anything yet. I found it interesting that he decided to stay there. But then he could just be again playing a bit of a longer game, keeping his eye on Sawyer, not wanting him to have the run of the beach, taking advantage of people. Because if he is there himself with the other characters that are on the beach, very likely that he would be the ringleader down there almost. And Locke as well, also kind of going with Jack, but I think Locke just wants a base to go wandering and find other strange shit.
Mm. Yeah, and I think he senses the importance of Jack, and I kind of feel that he's kind of he believes that his destiny is something to do with this island, at
Mm,
this point in time, and I think he then sees maybe just the fact that Jack does have this vision of his father in the previous episodes. Maybe that is that is Locke recognizing something in Jack, and therefore,
yep.
this is the person that I need to align myself with because he is also seeing things on this island.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it could be. He's why is the island showing Jack this? He's now wanting to find that out. He's had his encounter, as you said. He's looked into the eye of the island. He's had his own miracle and potentially been a bit greedy. Maybe doesn't want anyone else to have miracles the same way that he's had. It's yeah, it's just it's so, as I said, it's so grey with him. Everything's everything's up in the air. Some people you've been able to read whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, and even with Locke, there's nothing to take from him.
And then we get quite a nice sort of cheery ending.
Mm,
Hurley in one of the earlier episodes has found some batteries and he's found a Walkman, which some people will have no idea what a Walkman is. But he has got, I think that it's not a Discman, it's a cassette. It's a cassette Walkman as well. So, and
mm,
I mean, it can't be I don't know why he's not coming to fire under fire for the fact that he's wasting batteries, having a nice little listen to his music. But Hurley sits down at the caves and he puts a little song on, and then you've got Charlie, reunited with his guitar. He's playing away, and it's quite a nice sort of calm ending, which we haven't necessarily had much of in Lost. It's not to say that they've all ended on a cliffhanger, but they have ended on some sort of revelation or oh there's going to be this problem next time, but this kind of feels almost like a sort of like a closing of this first, I guess, quarter of the series where now we've got these two divides and it's kind of all quite nice at the caves at the moment.
yeah, it is. Yeah, but then I've looked at the name of the song. It's Willie Nelson, Are You Sure? Just the name of the song just seems a bit again, is that there's an intention there again. I've not looked at the lyrics though, that's the only thing. So that could be a bit more revealing. But even having that, it does feel, certainly feels a lot more upbeat than what we've had, and a bit more hopeful. They have got the fresh water source now, so they've got Locke, Hook and Hunt. They've got a food source, so it's yeah, it's positive depending on what the lyrics are. You sure by Willie Nelson is?
Yeah, I do love how Hurley's, as the Jack's trying to recruit people for the caves. I do just love, Hurley's honesty, whereas like I'm going with the Bora. Mr. Locke, John Locke's there, then I'm going there because that's where the food is, which is smart.
Right. It's what so the just a quick Google there, which is always good. Um, the recurring lyric in "Are You Sure" is "Are you sure this is where you want to be?" is a recurring lyric throughout that song, which could be a way of talking about the island, or it could be the divide. Are you sure you want to be in this cave? Are you sure you want to be on the beach?
Mm.
That's not accidental, I don't think. But
No.
especially if there's two dead bodies with randomly carrying very distinct pebbles. Why
And
are
there's
they
all
there?
those porcelain dolls. There's all those porcelain
And
dolls just, yeah, just out of shot.
and Jack's zombie dad because there's nobody in the coffin.
Yeah,
So aye,
just
fuck it, I'm going back to the beach.
with the sand, at least the sand fleas, you can barter for some protection. I'm not sure what protection you're going to
Mm,
get from any of the stuff in the caves, but
yeah.
yeah, I think it's as much as it's given the name, you would think it's going to be focused purely in on Jin and Sun. It's really not. It's much more about what's going on the island,
Mm,
but just kind of opens the two of those characters up a little bit more and sort of trying to explain why she is with him to a degree, because all we've seen from him is just nothing but nightmares up until this point. And there is the scene in the airport is quite sweet where he's got the same flower that we see him give her in their very first scene together in this big romantic thing. And it's kind of, I guess for her, it's her seeing that that man that she fell in love with is still there. I'm not
yeah.
sure that that would have been enough to make me stay if I'd have been about to leave the country, uh,
Mm,
get away from him. It might have made me a bit more willing to maybe phone him when I got to my destination. But
let him know where you
obviously for her, yeah, for her that's enough for her to tie herself back to him.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops. As you said, it doesn't give us too much for Sun and Jin this episode, but I'll be looking forward to seeing how that carries on with it.
Yeah, I think that wraps up this week's look back at White Rabbit and House of the Rising Sun. Next time, we will be taking a look into, Mr. Driveshaft himself, Charlie, in the episode The Moth, and also finding a little bit more out about Sawyer in Confidence Man. Thank you for giving us a listen and a watch. We do appreciate it. We hope that you are rewatching Lost. I know some people have picked it up since we started doing this, which is lovely to hear. And Andy, where can people, keep in touch with, your Lost theories when they're not on here?
You can get me on Twitter, because I'm not calling it X. Apart from that time, at Nowhere Andy, and on Instagram as well at Nowhere Andy. I've also just started a TikTok, usually just at the minute, just for basically. I've got one TikTok. I found out how to use it for the first time, not very well, but it's got links to the show for YouTube and Spotify, so you can find extra links on that. Yeah, that's me for that. Yourself?
I am at Gizmo Shikari on socials. I'm back on Blue Sky and Cat.Hughes, at all of the B Sky social gubbins, because who knows what's happening with Twitter. So I'm there. And I also have my weekly podcast, Movies with Mummy, where there's just chaos. And yes, there will be some more announcements to come about some stuff I'm doing in the writing world, but like Lost, I will keep that teased until next time.